Hey guys, what's up? Yolanda here, and I am back with part 2 of Minimalism for Black Liberation. Today I'm going to be talking about minimalist principles and how they can apply to the Black Liberation movement. So the major aim of the Black Liberation movement is for Black people to gain the right to self-determination. Self-determination means that you control your own life. So by extension, self-determination in the context of the Black Liberation movement is that Black people want the right to control their communities economically, culturally, and politically. So here are the minimalist principles, and I'm going to break down each one and how they can apply to the liberation struggle. The first principle is you are enough. We have to acknowledge that we are enough. We don't have to be perceived as equal to other groups of people to affirm ourselves. The self-esteem of Black folks needs to be considered, as well as the role of mental health care in our communities. How we feel about ourselves, individually and collectively, is central to our liberation. The emotional scars of racism, prejudice, internalized oppression and violence, mass incarceration, poverty and police brutality cannot be minimized. Our healing is our priority. Healing also facilitates a mindset change. Liberation begins in the mind, and education and experience affects this change. We cannot depend on the public education system to accurately teach our culture and history. Learning begins with each individual, and we have unprecedented access to information in this age. We also have to tell our stories, whether we tell them to someone we trust, via art or performance, blogs, or other formats. We have to share our experiences to heal and learn from each other. The second principle is exist on your own terms. This principle speaks to our need for self-sufficiency. The reality is that we don't control our communities economically, politically, and in some cases culturally. Gentrification has also taken its toll on urban communities. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there were hundreds of Black-owned communities. But why did these communities disappear? Some were eroded by terrorism and racist zoning policies, while others were simply abandoned. Migration waves and integration also changed the face of our communities. But it doesn't explain why we haven't reestablished those communities. Ironically, census data now shows that more young Black Americans are moving back to the South, but that residential segregation is still prevalent in this country. Increased political involvement at all levels is also necessary, though it is only one part of the process. To be counted and assert our priorities, we must show up and participate, particularly at the local and state levels, where we can see the efforts of our participation more immediately. But we will not rely solely on any government body to affect social change in our lives. Entrepreneurship is on the rise among Black people, particularly in the digital world. Still, many communities lack Black-owned businesses that cater to the basic needs of the community, such as its food sources, healthcare, transportation, education, employment, and adequate housing. There is definitely a link between entrepreneurship and community building. If we can supply the needs and wants of our communities, then wealth will remain in those communities longer. The third principle is let go of what does not serve you. There's no room for misogyny, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, ethnocentrism, or any other oppression that we heap on each other within our communities. Divisiveness is not serving us. It's okay to be critical of one another, but what are we doing to bridge the gaps of understanding? Can we accept constructive criticism as an attempt to uplift rather than attack? Unhealthy habits need to be shed also. We have to address the major health issues that disproportionately impact the Black population. Additionally, we must deal with the environmental impact of our habits and surroundings. We can also let go of our savior complex. Expecting Black leaders to live up to an idealized version of past leaders keeps us stuck. We do need to hold our leaders accountable, but recognize that they are humans and fallible. We each have to accept responsibility of being leaders in our own homes, families, and communities. The fourth principle is make space for what matters. We have to make space for each other. There is no such thing as being too black or not black enough. All black people don't do one thing or another. We are culturally diverse, and highlighting our diversity is necessary for advancing our liberation. It's also important to welcome people back into the community who have been previously incarcerated. They should have access to needed resources to become full participants in our communities and not relegated to the periphery or shamed for their past. Let's continue with our festivals, conferences, and traditions while creating new spaces for Blacks to inhabit. We must continue to innovate and celebrate and own our cultural and historical legacy. The cultivation of safe spaces while protecting our communities from internal and external threats is integral to our ability to positively express ourselves culturally, economically, and politically. The fifth principle is value things that money cannot buy. With integration and other national trends of the last 50 years, a large focus has been placed on financial and material gains. Black people prove they could be as valuable of consumers as the majority, but our quest for stuff has not led to social, economic, or political equality. Our focus on material gain has been a form of slavery. Our relationships, dreams, experiences, and cultural legacies deserve prioritization over material things. We are not defined by what we have, but rather what we do to affect change. The sixth principle is using resources responsibly. Environmental, financial, and material resources must be managed properly in our communities. This includes embracing green living and ways to reduce our carbon footprint, also improving our health and environment by employing indoor gardening, communal gardening, and supporting Black farmers. Additionally, promoting financial literacy, creating more thrift businesses and organizations to recycle and purchase affordable goods, establishing benevolent and saving societies will increase investment in our communities. Creating a financial culture of scholarship, charitable action, microloaning, and venture capitalism will allow us to use our collective buying power of over $1 trillion to redirect funds into our communities instead of into the hands of profiteering corporations. If we are to leave a legacy for future generations, we have to create diverse wealth-generating systems that can be sustained and easily passed along. And I'll leave you with this quote. You don't need more time, you just have to decide. We must start where we are with what we have. If you've noticed, all of the ideas that I mentioned have been proposed before. We already have the answers and we have the resources to secure our liberation by any means necessary. We just have to act and take back our communities. I will include sources for some of the information that I mentioned in the video down below in the description box. Let me know what you thought of these principles and how I apply them to the Black liberation movement. What would you add? What are your thoughts? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.